Okay, the Golden Dome. Why do we want why do we want Greenland?
There's kind of three large components here. One of it has to do with its strategic placing geographically. So it's access to the Arctic, because if you actually look at what a Soviet doctrine really is and what Russian doctrine is with respect to if we ever had to get in a conflict with the United States, there's limited bases in the Arctic that we have any sort of access to. And so if let's just say if Russian subs with nukes on them were to get in a conflict or whatnot, they're probably going to approach us from the Arctic. And the question is okay, how do we mitigate that? That's one way. The other thing has to do with ICBMs, so intercontinental ballistic missiles.
Okay.
How do we set up some sort of strategy like Reagan had talked about, like Star Wars, the idea because an intercontinental ballistic missile like leaves the atmosphere and then comes back in, and so could we destroy it in space and things of that nature. Greenland gives us very, very unique access, both from an economic standpoint with respect to potential shipping lanes, but it also provides for the Golden Dome, or this idea of being able to provide against missile strikes against the United States or our NATO allies. Now, that should make a lot of sense, right? From a strategic bombers perspective, from any sort of counter missile perspective, the United States is the one that possesses the technology to be able to set that up and effectively utilize Greenland. And we did used to have more bases in Greenland. A lot of them diminished after the Cold War for understandable reasons, but now that we're seeing a resurgence of Russian aggression, not to mention Chinese threats, it makes sense for the United States to once again look at the strategic piece of terrain. A second reason is it's in the Western Hemisphere, and that's always kind of been America's domain, right? The third reason has to do with natural resources, especially in the form of rare earth minerals.
Okay.
And one of the sources of frustration, I believe, with Denmark is, let's get beyond like Stephen Miller pointing out that, well, are you really sovereign if you can't actually protect what you got? Like that, from a historical perspective, Stephen's not wrong, but we tend to recognize other people's sovereign territory. By the same token, Denmark relies on the United States for security. NATO relies on the United States for security. I think it was Secretary Bessent that pointed out that the United States has spent $22 trillion more than the rest of NATO combined with respect to our mutual security. So when Donald Trump comes in and tells Denmark, hey, we'd really like to talk about potentially purchasing Greenland, owning Greenland, and Greenland's response right out the gate is, that's absurd, that's ridiculous. Oh, is it? Right? I think the comedian, Jimmy Carr said it best. He goes, well, there's another alternative. They can take it. No offense to your fine military, but something tells me you're not standing up to the United States. So I think some of it was just this incredibly rude response that we got from a partner that is completely reliant on the United States for its security, when we actually had very, very legitimate reasons why we wanted to use it, not just for our benefit, but for Denmark's benefit, for NATO's benefit.
Right.
On top of that, Denmark had been allowing Chinese companies to go in and potentially buy up mining rights for rare earth minerals. It's like, so let me get this straight. You want to give us crap, the guys that have spent $22 trillion more than the rest of NATO to keep you safe from communist threats, among other threats. But then you want to hand off mining rights to the Chinese, and you want to let them come in and build up infrastructure in Greenland, in our hemisphere. Now, I think Trump coming right off of, Venezuela wanted to do that as well. Now ask me where Maduro's sleeping tonight, right? It's going to Greenland going, we're not going to allow you to get away with this. Pardon me. But I think what it looks like has happened now. I don't think anybody thought that Donald Trump was actually going to, again, deploy the 101st Airborne Division to Greenland and take it over. He's very good at negotiating. And he tends to get what he wants. And I saw this one joke that went out like this, where it was Trump saying, hey, can we buy Greenland? We'll give everyone a ton of money, and we'll give Denmark a ton of money for Greenland. No, that's absurd. You can't do it. Well, we could just take it. I can't believe you would threaten NATO like that. NATO is going to send 37 troops to Greenland in order to teach us a lesson. And then finally it comes back, and what's the end deal? We get to set up whatever bases we want. We get to use the island for what we want. We get exclusive access to rare earth minerals, but we get to keep all of our money.
Right.
And Denmark gets to keep Greenland. Cool. Right. So I think at the end, Trump actually negotiated this very, very well, but he did it in his typical bombastic fashion.
All right, guys, if you like this clip and you want to watch the full episode, click here. And if you want more content like this, you can subscribe to the show by clicking here.